For Bu Endah Triwijati, could you please send your PowerPoint to our Zoom operator?
Okay.
Okay.
Still need some changes. Sorry.
Okay. It's all right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, presenter and the participant. Welcome to the ICGCS Day 2, Session 2, which the theme of this session is gender-based violence. In today's session, there is 5 participants, which is Alifiulatin Utaminingsih, Anna Fatia Cholida Hanum, Mai Hasni, and Endah Triwijati. Before we begin our first presentation, I want to remind you that all of you have 15 minutes speaking time, 10 minutes to present your presentation, to deliver your presentation, and 5 minutes for Q&A sessions. 1 minute before your time is up, your presentation time is up, I will remind you via Zoom chat box, and after that I will remind you directly. And for the Q&A session, you can type the question in the Zoom chat box and I will read it for you, or you can use a raise hand feature in the Zoom and I will give you opportunity to unmute your mic and ask the question directly to the presenter. So, before we begin, let me introduce myself. My name is Bima Jonanda and I will be your moderator for today's session. So, our first presenter is Alifiulatin Utaminingsih from Brawijaya University, from Universitas Brawijaya. For Alifiulatin, is she in this Zoom meeting? Yes.
I'm here as a second writer with Miss Alifiulatin because she's unable to attend. So as a second writer, I'm here to present the paper.
Okay, so as a second writer, so Miss Astrida Fitri will be represent Miss Alifiulatin. Okay. Yes. So you ready to begin your presentation?
Yes, I already sent my PowerPoint presentation to the committee. And I would also like to ask for permission not to use the Zoom meeting background because it is not compatible with my laptop, sadly.
All right, understandable. Okay, so you can begin your presentation. Your time will start when you start talking. So the time is yours.
Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen, and your esteemed speakers of this conference. My name is Astrida Fitri and I'm here presenting our research results. I'm the second author of this publication. Well, not publication yet of this research. I conducted this research alongside my partner, Ms. Alifiulatin Utaminingsih, and we are both from the Faculty of Social and Political Science of University of Brawijaya. And the title of our presentation this afternoon is Addressing Domestic Violence Against Women During the Time of COVID-19 Pandemic, the case of advocacy actors in the municipality of Malang, Indonesia. Thank you, and we would like to move to the next slide, please. Yes, so based on our introduction, we would like to first present the problems that we discovered during our research, especially the social problem as a whole, which made us embark on a journey research related to gender-based violence, especially in times of pandemic. So the first is that actually there are already several efforts or institutions or even regulations made in order to counter the problem of gender-based violence. The first is that there are agencies such as the Women Empowerment and Children Protection, Population Control and Family family planning agency. The second is there is another unit alongside of it that work alongside of it called the Women and Children Integrated Service. And we also conducted our research alongside a women's crisis center called Yan Mutiara in Malang. The three agencies here that we observed, as we called them advocacy actors for survivors of GBV or gender-based violence, all three of them conducted advocacy during incidents of violence against women, especially to protect the survivors of such incidents. Next slide, please. Yes, so the fundamentals of gender-based violence prevention and empowerment of survivors in Indonesia as a republic is based on three factors. First is the philosophy of Pancasila itself and the constitution of our republic, and also the Fourth Conference on Women in Beijing in 1995, in which the CEDAW principles were issued. Next, please. So we found that there are 5 key elements necessary for gender-based violence prevention during the COVID-19 pandemic. The first is it is absolutely necessary to provide access to justice for victims and survivors. The second is there is also a change in norms and behavior among societal members through high-level prevention efforts. The third is there is a very urgent need for urgent response to victims and survivors of GBV. The fourth is the strengthening of accountability and architecture to respond to the scourge of GBVF adequately. So this is the GBVF here stands for gender-based violence reoccurrence, in which there might be reoccurrences of cases if it's not prevented properly. And the fifth and last element here, but not least, is the prioritizing of interventions that might facilitate economic opportunities to address women's economic vulnerability. Because sometimes what makes these survivors, or rather than victims, I would like to call them survivors, but this is only a difference in terminology and paradigm, I'm afraid. But still, it is necessary to understand or to comprehend the reasonings behind their inability to escape the violent situations. Mostly it is because of economic factors. And so this becomes our reasoning to argue that addressing their vulnerability is a very important factor in trying to prevent such incidents from reoccurring within the span of their lives. Next slide, please. So our previous research that we read. Next slide, please. So we read research based from 2010 to 2020 from across different ranges of gender-based violence prevention based on several interventions by various plethora of agencies around the world, in which we saw throughout these publications how to actually intervene and advocate for victims or survivors during such incidents. What we found throughout the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 publications listed here is that to each country, it is a must or it is a necessity to each and every actor to collaborate together in order to prevent gender-based violence. Otherwise, the previously mentioned 5 key elements wouldn't be achieved. It is necessary for these advocacy actors or institutions to cooperate together to build a strong network in order to prevent such occurrences of gender-based violence in the future. Next slide, please. So the results of the research, it seems that there's something faulty with the settings of our PowerPoint, and for that we apologize. It's probably due to the difference of versions in Microsoft PowerPoint, I'm afraid. So it doesn't seem to appear to be very neat or orderly, but I can promise you, ladies and gentlemen, that it is far from our intention. This is just a matter of faulty setting. So next slide, please. So the results of our research. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 findings that we discovered that we would later try to match with the key elements advised in the previous slide, in which there had to be 5 steps of interventions. And our findings regarding the municipality of Malang during these times are as such. The first is that, I'm sorry, Kamali, could you please move the hourglass, please? I cannot read the first column. Yes, thank you. So we have to, in order to prevent the gender-based violence during the pandemic, there are several steps that the advocacy actors in the municipality of Malang, where we reside, have taken so far. The first is that these agencies have collected data related to violence. And the second, they already cooperate together with legal officials. So there are already formal cooperations between these institutions in order to prevent such violence from happening again and again within the lifespan of the victims. And then they also have mechanism for direct complaints and also the setting up of a call center. And they also try to take action together and handle and protect victims of such violence, while also providing security for such victims. The fourth is the fifth, to try to facilitate and mediate between both parties. So the victims and perpetrators are sometimes mediated so that there could be a way outside of the legal system in which they could reach probably some level of mediation. And then they also monitor the behavior of both parties afterwards. Next slide, please. So within the municipality of Malang, there's already a policy for handling cases of violence against women, which is why, based on the previous slide, you could see that there are already cooperations between these institutions. This is due to the existence of an existing regulation called the Municipality of Malang Regulation number 12 of 2015 concerning the protection of women and children victims of violence. Next, please. So they try to intervene through telephone or hotlines, receiving complaints by mail and also complaints by email. However, next slide, please. However, there are inhibiting factors during the advocacy, which is, next slide, please. These are the inhibiting factors. The first is there are an overlapping of tasks between actors and organizations. And there are also, of course, this is a classic problem in our beloved country, which is budget constraints. And there are also infrastructure constraints, which sometimes hinder them from taking proper intervention. And also human resources constraints. For example, the call center and the protection center or the shelter are managed by the same people. Thank you. Please, next slide. Well, on the other hand, there are also supporting factors. Next slide, please. We have normative and social factors from pre-existing regulations that I already mentioned.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Astrida, you have 30 seconds left.
Awareness of the general public regarding violence against women. So this is all what we can draw from our results. Basically, there are already cooperations, but there are supporting and inhibiting factors, while also the support of regulations within the pandemic context of gender-based violence prevention in Malang. Thank you for your kind attention, and I'm sorry for taking too much time. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Astrida Fitri Nuryani. Operator, you could stop the screen sharing, please. All right. So if any of the participants who want to give a question to the previous presenter, please use a raise hand feature, or you can type your question in the Zoom chat box. Once again, we really encourage you to ask a question to the presenter. Yes, Bu Nika Triwijati, yes, you're raising your hand, please. The time is yours.
Yes. Please call me just Tiwi. I'm a friend of your group, Madam.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I would send your regards to her. Thank you very much for saying hi.
I hope she's okay. Okay.
Yes.
It's very interesting and very important, because I would like to also ask, how is the sexual violence victims in getting or accessing the services, since all of the budget is cut off, and especially for this kind of issue because of COVID.
Yes.
Could you tell us a little bit more about that? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your questions and for standing hi to my fellow partner. So we would like to elaborate further. Actually, there's another slide that I haven't unfortunately covered yet within my presentation. So the result is that there is a very limited number of human resources, ma'am. So the problem with sometimes when these human resources at these agencies want to protect the survivors from being approached by the perpetrators of the violence, they fail to do so and have to send them back home or to mediate them because of not enough number of persons in trying to man the shelter. And also because of budget constraints, there cannot be any other improvements such as probably socialization through digital media or building another brand of, I don't know, probably socializing and engaging more youth, maybe to innovate more. This is also due to the limitations in budget terms. So those are my answers to your very insightful question.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right. Thank you. So if there are any question that the participant or the other presenter want to ask to Ms. Astrida?
If I cannot answer them, I will forward them to my co-researcher because we did it together. So I hope that I wouldn't impinge on her responsibilities and also contributions to this paper.
Okay, thank you. So is there any question? Okay, seems none. Thank you, Ms. Astrida Fitri Nuryani, a very interesting presentation, especially the position of the woman in the COVID-19 phenomena, because violence is not about physical violence, but also there is many kind of violence, structural violence and cultural violence, and etc. All right.
Yes. Also, then, unfortunately, yeah, with the people in my municipality, the people responsible were mostly because of limited number of human resource. We were focused on physical violence only, which is another setback to the development of proper advocacy, I'm afraid, but that's budget to you. Budget can do many things in constraining efforts. Yes. I'm afraid I have to turn off my camera for a while, and I'm sorry for explaining something further, but thank you very much for adding a final remark to my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Astrida. Then we move to our next presenter, which is Ms. Anna Fatia. Ms. Anna Fatia, are you there? If you have a trouble with your connection, if you have a bad connection, you could turn off your camera. I hope this could help to maintain your connection. So if it's good, as long as we can hear your presentation. Miss Anna Fatia, are you there? Hello? Mrs. Anna Fatia? Miss Anna Fatia, are you there? Can you hear me?
Oh, something wrong.
Hello, Miss Anna Fatia? Can you hear me? Because I can hear your voice a moment ago. Mrs. Anna Fatia? Yes. Yes. Can you hear me, Miss Anna Fatia?
Yes, she can hear you, but
no. Okay. Could we start your presentation, Mrs. Anna Fatia? Okay. Looks like Miss Anna Fatia is having trouble with connection, so we will move to the next presenter, which is Mrs. Kholida Hanum. Ms. Kholida Hanum, can you start the presentation? Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, then you have 50 minutes to 10 minutes to present your paper, starting when you start talking. Thank you. The time is yours.
Okay, thank you very much for the occasion. Before I deliver my presentation, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Holida Hanum. I'm a lecturer from IAIN Salatiga. And in this occasion, I will deliver my paper on the title, The Urgency of Women Protection from Sexual Violence, an analysis of the current regulation in Indonesia. Please, next slide. Okay, yeah. The background of this research is based on data from Komnas Perempuan regarding cases of sexual violence that continue to increase every year. Next slide. Citizens, not only adult women, but also women in their youth are the most victims of sexual abuse as a result of the patriarchal society's socio-cultural framework. The right to be free of threat, discrimination, and violence is a crucial one to achieve. The realization of this right is closely linked to other fundamental rights, such as the right to protection and the right to a fair trial. The right to safety and the right to justice are also crucial in ensuring that victims' rights are respected in cases of sexual violence. The criminal procedural law, which focuses solely on the preservation of the suspect rights, has pushed the victim's protection and feeling of justice to the margins. Please, next slide. Due to the criminal code's weak control of sexual assault, many cases of sexual violence go unpunished, allowing criminals to go unpunished and sexual violence to persist. Law number 23 of 2002 concerning child protection, which were later updated by law number 35 of 2014, and law number 21 of 2007 concerning the eradication of the crime of human trafficking provides. The three statutes can only be utilized for sexual assault that happen in a limited scope. Victims are victims of domestic violence, children or victims of criminal acts of trafficking in person. Please, next slide. Meanwhile, the formation of the unitary state of the Republic of Indonesia strives to defend the whole Indonesian nation. Among other things, this purpose must be regarded as all citizens, including women, being protected. The preamble to the 1945 Constitution of the Republic of Indonesia outlines the goal that will be pursued throughout the article that make up the body of the Constitution. Apart from Constitution, the principle of legal protection for the Indonesian people is derived from Pancasila and the concept of the rule of law. The three sources prioritize recognition, guarantee, and respect for human dignity, which is manifested in two forms, namely preventive and repressive legal protection facilities. Next slide, please. Because the Indonesian Constitution and a number of laws and regulations have guaranteed the need for particular treatment for effort to promote respect, fulfill and safeguard the rights of women and children, the limiting of the legal umbrella that protect them from sexual violence is alarming. As a result, it's fascinating to consider how arrangements for the protection of women from sexual violence have evolved, as well as how to overcome the legal vacuum that exists in this area. Please, next slide. And in this research, this study is a normative legal research. Legal research is an endeavor to seek out and discover accurate legal knowledge. This study analyzes several Indonesian laws and regulations, including Indonesian Criminal Code, law on human rights courts, law on the eradication of the crime of trafficking in person, law on pornography, and law on health. Please, next slide. Result and discussion. Please, next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. Next slide, please. In this research, I have analyzed of several regulations in Indonesia. Please, next slide. Okay, the first is the type sexual violence, rape, and issue about rape in legal regulation in Indonesia. It is in the Criminal Code, Article 285. But the limitation legal regulation, the first is limited to sexual intercourse with use of force or threats, and proving procedure burden the victims. And the second, sexual harassment. Sexual harassment has not been regulated in the criminal code, but the criminal code regulates option X. And the limitation is only the form of harassment by physical contact, such as kissing, touching, genitals, and etc. And the third is sexual exploitation. The legal regulation, there is in law number 21, 2007 on the education of the crime of trafficking in person. But the limitation legal regulation, it is person limited act for the purpose of human trafficking only. And in the law number on pornography, not explained clearly what is meant by sexual exploitation. And then the fourth, sexual slavery and torture, forced contraception, in the law number 26/2000 concerning human rights courts, and the limitation only the context of crimes against humanity. And the fifth, forced abortion, in the criminal code, Article 347, and health law, Article 76. And the limitation only physical coercion, targeting practice, medical difficult in cases of exploitation and power relation. And the sixth, forced marriage, there is no regulation yet. Please, next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. So, what is the urgency of women protection from sexual violence through PKS bill? Yeah, next slide. The first is the mandate of the Indonesian Constitution is to protect the entire Indonesian nation from all forms of violence. And the second, to prevent incidents of sexual violence. And the third is develop and implement mechanism for handling, protecting, and recovering that involve the community and side with the victim so that the victim can overcome the violence he has experienced and become a survivor. And the fourth is provide justice for victims of sexual crimes through criminal and firm action for perpetrators of sexual violence. And fifth, ensure the implementation of state obligation, the role of the family, community participation, and corporate responsibility in creating an environment free of sexual violence. And the last, to increase the community's courage to report their case to the law enforcement apparatus or service provision agency due to the arrangement legal protection for the community. Please, next slide. And the conclusion, yeah, next slide, please. The most important thing for the state of Indonesia to consider, aside from building a legal structure and legal culture that combats sexual violence, is to prepare a legal umbrella that protects women from sexual violence. Therefore, the ratification of PKS or penghapusan kekerasan seksual, rancangan undang-undang penghapusan kekerasan seksual or PKS bill as initiative bill of the House of Representative Republic of Indonesia is a concrete step for the state in carrying out its constitutional obligation to protect the people and realize the right to be free from violence and discrimination. I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Ms. Khalida. Very great presentation because it talked about discussion about the PKS regulation, which many is pro and many is contra and this issue. So once again, is there any participant who want to ask a question to the previous presenter? You can raise your hand or you can type your question in the Zoom chat box. So is there any participant or presenter that want to ask a question to Ms. Khalida Hanum? Once again, we really encourage. Yes, Mrs. Triwijati, the time is yours. I'm sorry, I think you not unmute your mic.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Khalida, if I'm not mistaken in spelling your name. Yeah, we know that it is very important to have this draft of bill or bill. I don't know how to say it correctly, but we know that there are so many group of people who say no to this draft. How's the situation in your city or in Central Java, for instance? Are there still many groups who are really still saying no? And maybe you can also teach me, let me know how to deal with them, especially those who have big names, probably. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khalida. You maybe answer the question from Mrs. Triwijati.
Okay, thank you very much, Ibu Nika Triwijati, for your question. A good question. As we know, there are pro and contra in the PKS bill, yeah, but despite all that, we must continue to campaign for it. Especially in Central Java, we have campaign for this issue. We have such a team of advocacy Jateng, and yeah, the member is so much organization. There are LBH Apik, and then LRCKJH, LBH Semarang, and then university or campus around the Central Java. We together we campaign this issue, and we make such a seminar or webinar to promote this issue in Central Java. Yeah, and I think that in Central Java, mohon maaf, ini saya agak gaduh-gaduh ya Bu, mungkin bahasa Inggrisnya iya dengan bahasa Indonesia agar bisa menyampaikan dengan baik. Jadi kalau sebenarnya di Jawa Tengah sendiri, memang pro dan kontra itu juga terlihat begitu. Tapi itu tadi kita punya satu organisasi yang kemudian terpadu yang terdiri dari beragam macam organisasi, ada dari Fatayat, Lembaga Keagamaan, kemudian Aisyah, kemudian kampus-kampus ada Yayan Salatiga, kemudian UIN Wali Songo, kemudian juga ada USM dan kampus-kampus lain di Jawa Tengah yang kemudian kita bersatu dan kita membuat tadi advokasi RUU Pungkas atau RUU PKS, dan kita melaksanakan berbagai macam kampanye, kegiatan-kegiatan untuk terus menggelorakan isu-isu ini begitu. Ya. Dan kami sangat beruntung memiliki semacam environment, lingkungan yang betul-betul mendukung adanya hal ini ya, begitu sangat kompak sekali terkait dengan tadi organisasi-organisasi di Jawa Tengah tadi untuk terus mendukung adanya isu ini. Itu Ibu. Terima kasih.
Okay, thank you for the answer, and thank you also for the question. A very interesting question, a very fruitful discussion. But I think the Q&A time is up, so we will move to the next presentation. But I think it is a very interesting issue because the one who contra in this bill of this regulation is also come from the woman group, which is
Oh yes,
a
of
very
course.
yes, it's a very interesting
Yes,
because
of course.
this
You cannot
regulation
say,
is
yeah, it is not about apa ya, between women or men. You know, this is a group, political.
yes. All right, so we will move to our next presenter. Actually, our second presenter, Mrs. Anna Fatia. Can you hear me? Can you ready to present your paper?
Yes,
Mrs. Anna.
Inshallah. Yes.
Okay. If you have trouble with your connection, it's all right if you turn off your camera.
Yes.
As long as we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. You can start your presentation now if you're ready. The time is yours.
Yes. Thank you very much for moderator. Let me present my research. The title is Female Workers and Violence in Oil Palm Plantation in Lampung Province by me, Anna Fatia, and my team member, Pak Tony, Pak Julio, Bu Tati, Pak Siwi, Bu Asri, Pak Tri, and Pak Kunandar. Next. As an introduction, background of the research, but about protection of female workers in oil palm plantation in Indonesia becomes one of the issues highlighted by the international world, and it is considered to be negative. There are some assumptions that oil palm plantation have violated human rights by not giving protection to their female workers. To find out to what extent this issue is true, this research is trying to get the answer to the question. So the aim of the research is three items. First is to identify of the characteristic of female workers in palm oil plantation in Lampung, and then to find out whether there was violence against female workers in this plantation, and third, to analyze the correlation of cultural values and norms with the phenomenon of violence against female workers. Next. The methods. Location in Lampung Province, there are 4 villages and 2 kabupaten or regency. There are Redosari, Sinar Banten, Sidodadi, and Sidoarjo. And the period of research is April. And then research method use survey, observation, and in-depth interview. And then data analysis with statistical descriptive. Oh yeah, number of the sample is 121 person. There are daily laborers, family camp, full-time workers, and as a farmer. Next. The result and discussion. The first is about characteristic of female workers in palm oil plantation. Daily labor atau buruh harian lepas atau burongan workers who are paid daily and do not have a working relationship with plantation companies, but with employment agencies. And then family campers or family camp is the woman who help fulfill the husband's job targets in the company. And then permanent workers or pekerja tetap is the woman who have working relationship with the company. And then palm oil farmer or petani kelapa sawit is a woman who work for their own plantation or works as farm workers. Okay, next. It's about age of life and educational level of life. Look at the picture once. older women dominate working as daily laborers for not being able to enter a formal job in the company. And then look, the second, the majority of female oil palm plantation workers have a very low level of education, finishing elementary school and even no finishing elementary school or SD atau tidak lulus SD, especially casual daily laborers atau pekerja borongan paling rendah posisinya. Okay, next. How about the marriage status and the household size? The marriage status. The majority of respondents are married. In the group of daily workers, there are more widows than other groups of the workers. It means a single woman. And then about the household size, the number of family members in the family camp group was more than the other groups. This has a correlation with the younger age of the couple and with the number of children they are still living with. Next. But asset ownership, the household economy level of palm farmers is better than other groups. Almost all working women have their own house and the majority on a motorbike. But land ownership is generally in the range of 0.1 to 1.9 hectare. Ownership of land by oil palm farmer is wider than of other groups of workers. It means that the farmer is more well-being than others. Okay, next. How about violence against women in oil palm plantation? We can see the graph that all respondents did that they had never experienced physical or sexual violence themselves. However, as many as 2.86% of casual daily workers state that they had experienced verbal violence, for example, being ridiculed atau diejek bahasa Indonesia. Okay, next. About the violence experienced by others, so that all respondents state that they had never heard or seen any other woman around them who experienced verbal, physical, or sexual violence. Next. Violence action experienced by girls. You can see in the graph. All respondents state that they had never heard or seen any girls around them who experienced verbal, physical, or sexual violence. Next. How about the violence location? You can see the graph in the left one. Oil palm farmers, only two people, who state that verbal violence in the form of ridicule occur in oil palm plantation. Daily worker, one person, state that verbal violence occur in a public place. How about second one? All respondents state that there was no physical and sexual violence on plantation, homes, office, or store, or in public places. Next. How about report of violence? You can see the graph. Oil palm farmers, two people, and daily laborers, one person, who state verbal violence did not report it to the authorities. And how about physical and sexual to report of violence? Since the respondents state that there was no physical or sexual violence, so there was no report on this. Next. Correlation of cultural values and norm with violence. The low rate of violence against women workers who live in villages around the oil palm plantation showed that the value, order, norm, and culture that is adopted in the community are still firmly kept by the member of the community. Women workers in oil palm plantation live in the transmigration villages who come from Java and are of Javanese ethnicity. Mulder mentioned that the Javanese community's moral foundation lies in the peacefulness and harmony, or perdamaian dan kerukunan. The Javanese idealize in the community's harmonious rule. Looking at people as an individual is not that important. Together, they create community. The presence of community harmony will ensure better life for the individuals. One's moral duty in the Javanese community is to maintain harmony in the community by carrying out their social responsibility.
1 more minute.
Yeah, next. Conclusion. It is indicated that there are 40 types of women who work in oil palm plantation, namely daily laborers, family campers, permanent company workers, and oil palm farmers. The level of education is low, and the economic condition is highest to oil palm farmers and the lowest for daily workers. Based on respondent statement, the level of violence against women in oil palm plantation is very low, but both verbal, physical, and sexual violence. It is suspected that there is a correlation between the low level of violence against women and the Javanese cultural values and norm that emphasizes peace and harmony. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation, Mrs. Anna Fathia. So once again, is there any participant or any other presenter who want to ask a question? Please use the raise hand feature, or you can just type the question in the Zoom chat box. So is there any question that you want to ask to the previous presenter? No, there is no question. Okay, maybe I will ask the question to Mrs. Anna Fathia. So this is a very interesting topic about the woman in the oil palm plantation. So a woman working in the sector that consider it a very masculine work, but I think what I find interesting here is that there is no violence regarding sexual violence, something like that. There's no reporting regarding this, only an abuse, a verbal abuse. So I have two questions. The first one is this verbal abuse related to the social construction of women working in the area that consider it a very masculine working area? And my second question is what really intrigued me, that maybe there is a sexual violence case, but this woman tend to not report it because they're surrounded with male workers that will have a bad stigma ties to them, because maybe they will say that in bahasa as perempuan nggak betul or something like that. So that is my question. Thank you.
Pak Moderator, allow me to mix with bahasa because I think it's more clear if I
Yes. Boleh Bu, silakan.
I think all of the participants are from Indonesia. I hope they have understand with the bahasa Indonesia. Oke, bisa saya jelaskan. Jadi penelitian ini hasilnya sangat mengejutkan bagi saya karena secara hipotesis bahwa perempuan di perkebunan kelapa sawit itu sangat rentan terhadap kekerasan, dan itu disampaikan oleh lembaga internasional begitu, di mana mereka melakukan penelitian yang dengan responden yang sangat sedikit dan hanya satu di lokasi. Itu membuat saya penasaran. Kemudian saya mengajukan proposal ke dana hibah ke BPDPKS, itu Badan Pengelola Kelapa Sawit, dana keuangan kelapa sawit, untuk memastikan hal itu. Dan sungguh mengejutkan bahwa dari jawaban mereka, dari pengakuan mereka, dan saya meyakini atas pengakuan itu karena saya cross check dengan tokoh masyarakat begitu, tidak ada peristiwa selama dia tinggal di situ. Mereka tinggal di situ karena ikut transmigran. Jadi umumnya adalah memang desa-desa transmigran sebagai kawasan sekitar perkebunan kelapa sawit, dan umumnya adalah sebagai sumber tenaga kerja perkebunan kelapa sawit itu dari keluarga transmigran ini begitu. Dan dari jawaban secara survei, meskipun ada kelemahan ya survei ini karena sangat linier, tetapi paling tidak mendapatkan gambaran secara umum, gambaran nyata seperti apa, dan sungguh mengejutkan memang tidak ada begitu. Jadi akhirnya akan mengkontra dengan informasi selama ini gitu bahwa ada kekerasan. Nah, penelitian ini hanya sebagian kecil dari penelitian yang besar, karena penelitian yang besar adalah perlindungan pemenuhan hak dan perlindungan perempuan dan anak. Nah, salah satu isu kekerasan ini yang saya sampaikan di materi hari ini. Dan faktanya seperti itu. Jadi boleh saja bahwa orang tidak percaya, tetapi masalahnya kami proses mengumpulkan itu bisa divalidasi lah. Saya yakin itu valid karena desa-desa yang memiliki pekerja itu kami jadikan responden seperti itu. Jadi karena ini fokusnya kekerasan, memang tidak terjadi kekerasan. Nah, kalau isu yang terkait dengan ketidaksetaraan gender, memang ada, misalnya beban lebih di dalam rumah tangga. Jadi para pekerja ini itu seperti perempuan lain di Indonesia, selain dia bekerja di rumah atau selain bekerja di perkebunan kelapa sawit ya, sebagai pekerjaan produktif, dia juga melakukan pekerjaan reproduktif, dan itu tetap urusannya perempuan. Nah, ini konteks yang berbeda. Kalau itu memang terjadi, tetapi kalau yang kekerasan ini memang tidak terjadi. Nah, seperti itu yang bisa saya jelaskan. Pada saat saya harus mencari kenapa kok tidak terjadi, akhirnya saya mencoba-coba menghubungkan dengan budaya itu, nilai-nilai budaya. Dan hampir semuanya adalah orang Jawa dan masih menerapkan nilai-nilai kejawaan, dan saya mengutip dari ahli Jawa gitu ya, dari UGM antara lain, dan dari orang luar negeri gitu. Seperti itu jawabannya. Jadi saya mencoba untuk mengkorelasikan antara temuan ini dengan nilai-nilai budaya Jawa.
Baik, Bu. Terima kasih. Terima kasih untuk jawabannya. Memang temuan datanya sangat menarik sekali. I think that is conclude for Mrs. Anna Fathia presentation, and then we move to our next presenter, which is Mrs. Mai Hasni. Mrs. Mai Hasni, are you there?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. You are ready?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. The time will start when you start talking. So the time is yours.
Okay, thank you. I am Mai Hasni and from Andalas University. Now I am talking about potential of parent and informal community figure in effort to prevent sexual violence. Presented by Mai Hasni, Fahrina, and Ziwati. In this presentation, I have 4 points. There are, please next slide. Yeah. Background, problem, and purpose of study. Literature review, research method, research result. First, we discuss about background problem. Some people judge Indonesia were located in emergency situation of violence. Even Komnas Perempuan call reality of such a situation crime sexual violence. The city of Padang does not escape the phenomenon of sexual violence, such as the case of 5 elementary school students who were victims of sexual harassment of school teacher, sexual harassment in public transportation, sodomy of a student, and the rape of women with a disability by her brother-in-law, rape by her stepfather, caretaker employer. There of course in Padang City in 2019 was the case of molestation by candidate for the DPRD Padang City against a 2 girl, 8 and 11 year. Next, please. In case of sexual violence is evident that the effort made in particular by the government are not yielded optimal result. The increase in sexual violence needs to be observed or addressed properly, because sexual violence is known to have negative impact both of victim, children or victim, families and community. On of the prevention effort in through the role of parent in informal leader in the community. Next, please. The purpose of study, Sheffield described the potential of family and informal figure in effort to prevent sexual violence. The second described synergy between the government and informal community leader in preventing and overcoming sexual violence. Next, please. The second literature review, Purwandari 2000, which is in action that can be in the form of sexual encouragement, such as touching, groping, kissing, and crying out other action, where this action tend to be disliked and wanted to hurt its victim. Sexual violence in also take the form of forcing victim towards pornography products, sexual job, degrading and harassing remarks related together to the gender and the victim. Coercive sexual relation or violence that victim does not agree with or injuring the victim. Next. Abdullah 2002 and Muniarti 2006 see sexual violence as a form of injustice related to rule due to gender difference, news value, social, cultural gender bias, society. The 10 emergency of the violence by men against women. Here, culture and religion are said to have become the sort of sexuality construction that legitimate structural relationship the weakened woman. Sexual violence against women is rife in connection with a patriarchal culture that causes discrimination and injustice in society. Means are socialized to be brave, strong, true, and given privilege by the community. Pride in this expressed in the form sexual harassment against women, among others. Next. Several factors underlie the encouragement of sexual violence, namely which characteristic physical and reproduction are owned by women supporting occurrence of sexual violence, making women more likely to become victims. Inequality of relation between men and women. There are gender difference that are socially constructed, which label men as stronger and higher in status in society. The third economic factor, women can be used as a means of making profits. Journal Perempuan 26 edition. Next. From sexual violence, the rape, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, penyiksaan seksual, perbudakan seksual, human and sexual punishment, perdagangan perempuan untuk tujuan seksual, penghukuman tidak manusiawi dan bernuansa seksual, tradition sexual practice that hurt discriminate against women, forced marriage, forced abortion, intimidasi atau serangan bernuansa seksual termasuk ancaman atau percobaan perkosaan, kontrol seksual termasuk pemasangan busana dan kriminalisasi perempuan lewat aturan diskriminatif beralasan moralitas dan agama, forced prostitution, dan forced contraception or sterilization. Next. The third research methods, research approach, equality approach, type of descriptive, data collection technique, in-depth interview, observation, informal research, parents and traditional leader, analyze, data analysis, qualitative, interpretative. Next. Definitely research result. And the last point about result is people who play role in prevent sexual violence are the few parents. The rule are provision of religion, value, ethic, moral, sexual education, supervising children activity, building effective and open communication, and support children. Religious figure.
One more minute.
There are agent socialization, religious education, ethic, moral, and sexuality, as facilitator, mediator, as counselor or rehabilitator, and accompaniment. So traditional figure, there are agent socialization, provision of social and tradition, as a facilitator or mediator, as a mentoring counselor, make tradition rule, as a judge or give tradition sanctions.
I'm sorry, Miss Mai Hasni, your time is 30 more seconds, so please write it quickly.
Yes. Bundo Kandang, there are as agent socialization, social value education, social education, as a facilitator or mediator, as counselor rehabilitator, the end accompaniment. True figure there are the rule are a facilitator or mediator, as a protector, assistant, counselor, empowerment. Next. The form of synergy between the government and informal community leader in preventing sexual violence include empowerment, informal leader in the context and strengthening of trust in competence or capacity. Strengthening in the independent of local institutions, the shelter informal figure. The informal figure are
I'm sorry, Mrs. Mai Hasni, your time is up.
Okay,
I'm sorry. My sincere apologies. Your time is up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Mayhasni. It's a sorry that we cannot hear until the end of your presentation because we must on track on the schedule. But it is a very, very interesting presentation. Operator, could you stop the screen share, please? Okay, thank you. Okay, so is there any participant or other presenter who want to ask a question to Mrs. Mayhasni? You could raise your hand or type your question in the chat box. Is there any question? Is there any question? Okay. If there is no question from the participant or from other presenter, maybe I will ask Mrs. Mayhasni. My question is, yes, according to your presentation, we need parent or informal community figures to prevent sexual violence, especially when you give example of the case in the West Sumatra. Especially in West Sumatra, we have a traditional female figure that we call Bundo Kanduang. So what is your take? What is your perspective regarding this? What is Bundo Kanduang role to prevent sexual violence amongst people that vulnerable for that?
Saya jawab dengan bahasa Indonesia saja ya.
Oke, nggak apa-apa Bu.
Ya, baik, ini terkait dengan peranan Bundo Kanduang di dalam mengatasi kekerasan ini. Nah, itu yang seperti yang saya sampaikan tadi terkait dengan ada 5 peranan dari tokoh-tokoh masyarakat, mulai dari orang tua, agama, tokoh adat ya, dan juga tokoh pemuda. Jadi Bundo Kanduang di sini di dalam hal perannya di dalam mengatasi kekerasan di dalam terkait dengan kekerasan ini terhadap perempuan itu peranan yang dimainkannya adalah sebagai agen sosialisasi ya. Artinya di situ Bundo Kanduang memberikan sosialisasi juga kepada perempuan-perempuan bagaimana cara mengatasi dirinya ya terkait dengan apa yang ancaman-ancaman yang yang ditimpakan kepada mereka. Kemudian di samping itu juga adanya edukasi nilai-nilai sosial ya. Nah, edukasi nilai-nilai sosial itu tentu ini banyak hal ya, aturan-aturan yang akan yang disampaikan kepada perempuan, yaitu seperti bagaimana caranya misalnya membatasi diri dalam pergaulan, kemudian bagaimana misalnya dalam waktu misalnya, jadi jangan seperti jalan dengan sembarang orang yang tidak dikenal misalnya. Nah, kemudian di samping itu juga adanya pendidikan seksual ya. Jadi ini sebenarnya kalau pendidikan seksual ini ada kalanya ketika di dalam masyarakat kita itu sangat juga kadang-kadang ada istilahnya agak tabu ya, tetapi ini perlu disampaikan karena bagaimanapun juga ketika anak perempuan sudah menanjak sudah masuk kepada masa-masa yang pubertas. Nah, tentu ini anak-anak ini harus pandai menjaga diri, harus pandai bersikap dan bertata krama yang lainnya sesuai dengan tuntunan adat Minangkabau. Nah, kemudian juga ini Bundo Kanduang perannya juga sebagai fasilitator atau mediator, ya. Nah, kemudian juga sebagai konselor, rehabilitasi dan pendampingan. Jadi kalau terjadi segala sesuatunya terkait dengan perempuan, maka Bundo Kanduang juga berperan sebagai konselor di situ di dalam hal pendampingan terhadap perempuan-perempuan yang terjadi segala sesuatunya terhadap diri mereka.
Oke, baik. Terima kasih jawabannya Bu Mayhasni. Thank you for your answer. A very great insight from your answer. All right, then we move to our last presenter, which is Mrs. Endah Triwijati. All right, your presentation is already shared. Do you want to?
May I use my own? Sorry.
Oh, you want to use your own PowerPoint?
Yes. In some.
Okay. Maybe operator, you could stop the screen share. I already give an access to you so you can share your PowerPoint. Okay, we can see your presentation. The time will start when you start talking.
Yes.
The time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the time. I am TV, just call me TV. This is about my dissertation, actually. I'm looking for intention of early detection of domestic violence victims by healthcare providers at Puskesmas, and my research is in Surabaya. Well, as we know, everybody here knows that domestic violence incidents and its impact is so widespread and pervasive. And we know that there are 1 per 4 women. Lots of them is still in silence. Yeah, the impact is like that: fatal effect, non-fatal effect, and then also for the children, when they saw the violence, they have the impact is just the same as if they have this violence directly. And for the state, actually, loss of productivity and employment, and also added healthcare costs, community service, legal processes. So it's very big things. This is like a terrorism for me. Well, we have to, of course, we have to have a comprehensive handling. And by saying so, it means that we have to take care also the economy, politics, and everything else. But my focus is on health sector because it's very crucial and strategic as a prevention function, yeah, and focusing more on the secondary or early detection. Condition in Indonesia, I think everybody is already also known that we have started in mid of 90s, but the concentration is still on the tertiary prevention. So dealing with the impacts on women's physical health and medical legal. So yeah, we have a legal system. The secondary one is still lacking. So and if we look at the system, we know that if we talk about the secondary or early detection from elsewhere, we know that it is very important to use the universal screening. So everybody, all patients should be screened to see whether they have experienced domestic violence or any kind of violence, gender-based violence. But of course, we also know that the constraint is big. Yeah, one is from the structural constraints. You can see it yourself, and also the individual healthcare providers. I mean, we talk about the personal and social barriers. We talk about systemic barriers, theoretical effect, because if the education not touching this issue and the peculiarity of this issue, well, then the approach will be the same. And of course, they will meet a silent patient, a difficult patient. Usually they call it like that. But the Warsaw, she's a psychiatrist, American psychiatrist. She really underscored that domestic violence is a complex social problem rather than a biomedical one. So addressing it requires more than simply adding new diagnostic categories. We need to change differential diagnosis or new technical skills to clinical repertoire. And of course, if you want to understand the response, it's very important to understand in the first place about the interrelation between the personal experience of the HCP's life, because every one of them or us we are human. So we are very likely facing with violence. So the social, cultural, religious beliefs, as well as the social system of Puskesmas, as well as their social life. The dominant culture, we know, all of us also know the patriarchal culture as well as alternative ones, has become their strong context actually in the ways in which SCP interpret the experience. Yeah. So this is the conclusion of my previous research. Now, it has also shown that familism ideology is very strong, steering their personal and family life, influence their implicitarian response. They tend to tolerate domestic violence and limitize their response to empower the patient, because these dominant types of thinking as person, and also they are really trained to use a more objective, so-called objective approach. So the dominant response tend to escalating dangers, trivializing and minimizing the abuse, blaming victim, not respecting patient's autonomy, and there is also no institutional support even related to their safety nor building their capacity to be able to respond. So even though health sector is a very crucial one, but still, and I'm very sad because of this COVID, it becomes more and more weak. I don't know, hopefully it's not like that. Hopefully I'm wrong. Yeah. And the following norms are still strong. 5 minutes per patient, preserve good image of HCP as well as Puskesmas. So this is the necessary condition for HCP willingness for doing secondary prevention. Well, I'm not going to talk about this so much because time will up and fly. But the important thing is intervention to the system of Puskesmas. So I'm doing this because I would like to grab every one of us. Let's do something to health sector. Yeah, in engaging all HCP, all department and relevant professional associations like IDI, institutional support, regulations need to be in place. Also infrastructure. And revitalizing the function of Puskesmas as really public health center. So the aims of my study is to analyze the influence of personal and cultural group and structural factors actually on the intention of health workers or HCPs to carry out early detection, which is not just detecting, but characterized by the empowerment of victims of domestic violence. Where's my, yeah. Yes. I'm trying to looking at this. So when most of all, it is not only in Indonesia, elsewhere is still like this. Yeah. Power and medical control is still strong, predominantly. I'm sure and I hope there are, that is not like this. Yeah. How to change, because if we want to have a respond that empowering the victim, we need to be in this having this characteristic, yeah, respecting confidentiality, not talking about patient with other HCPs, believing and accepting the victim's stories, providing an understanding of inequality, respecting client autonomy, giving access to other services, particularly for DV or gender-based violence, and give access to, it's doubling. Believing, actually believing, I'm sorry. This is the point, the DV, the dependent variable. I'm using quantitative. Motivational or personal is the early detection, victim empowerment, the motive to do this. Yeah. And it is very much influenced based on my previous research. The personal aspect is very important. Seeing the memory, the autobiographical memory of the HCPs, and looking at the structure or institutional support, also cultural, that is familialism, and group norms.
1 more minute.
Ah, God. Okay. I will jump to the end. Sorry. So actually, the result was still in Bahasa Indonesia. The result is it's very important to see the curing orientation. CO is curing orientation biomedical. This is the most, or sorry, I will see the last one. Okay, conclusion. That group norms factors in patient management that is still more on curing orientation, and personal factors, HCP related to domestic violence play a very important role in SPVE intentions. Curing is had a opposite effect on SPVEV, but the CO biomedical is much more strong. It is stronger than the AI, autobiographical memory. Yeah, not AI, but I am. The indirect effect, it's much more strong. It's stronger than the direct effect. So the attitude of the health worker or the HCP to the SPVE action and the 4 characteristics of victim empowerment, that is believe in victim stories, ensuring that this is not her fault, giving access, helping them to have a safety planning, and appreciating or valuing the autonomy of the client, of the patient is a very important one. The mediating variables that have the greatest influence, the biggest influence.
I'm sorry, Triwi, the time is
another 3. So,
all right.
So this is the result.
30 seconds, wrap it up, okay? Wrap it fast, okay? 30 seconds.
Oh my God. Okay. Confirmation. Okay. So I want to say that current institutional support has no effect. It means there is still no support. Yeah. And this is the weakness of quantitative approach, that familiarism ideology is not. It shows no effect, but if we use the qualitative one, it really shows. So the policy and patient management education is very much important to be intervene, integrating the principles and skills of health workers to empower victims. Caring orientations needs to be strengthened, not curing one or make it balanced. The benefit scheme for early detection also need to be shown, to be educated to the scholars, and health workers need to be more confident in their abilities. And this means that the education needs to be changed. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Triwi. My sincere apologies that your presentation is cut short because we must stay on the schedule. Once again, a very interesting presentation. So is there any participant or other presenter who want to raise a question? Yes, Mrs. Astrida Fitri, the time is yours.
Astrida Fitri,
oh, yes. Hello, Mrs. Nika. Yes.
Yes.
So I'm returning the favor. Thank you for commenting on my presentation earlier. And I say that our presentations actually have something in common. So I would like to ask some questions to you. Do you think intervention through, healthcare facilities are more effective in addressing repetitive gender-based violence rather than interventions through non-healthcare facilities? Do you think interventions through healthcare workers, for example, more effective than those outside of the healthcare system, and why? If you may probably offer your opinions based on the interactions among the actors.
It is very important. Yes, it is very important. Thank you for the question. It's very, very important. I'm not saying that it is more important than the other one or the other else, yeah? Because Puskesmas is, everybody goes there. And so if the health workers knows how to do screening, yeah, they are not going to help them. I mean, not going to overcome the problem. Of course not, because this is a very, very, very complicated one. Yeah, but if the Puskesmas or Rumah Sakit hospital knows how to prevent, how to screen, universal screening, for instance. And it's actually very simple. If they can do that, and they have like this small leaflet, which give information about what is violence and why and the effect and what to do, and giving also services, the phone numbers, those stuff, being given to the patient. Then even though she or he or this kid say no, they don't have this kind of big messy problem, they can still read it, and they know if it happens, then they can go where. If it happens to the mother or to the auntie or to the whoever, they can tell the services, not the healthcare. So the healthcare only is not easy. Only screening. My experience having pilot study with puskesmas health workers, the perawat nurse, they actually want to help, but since the education, the ideology of doing this kind of things is curing orientation, which means if somebody comes to them, they have to give pills, and those pills will help them. Boom. They feel that just asking is not ethical whatsoever. So needs to change their ways of thinking, not the HCPs itself, but the university probably, the faculty of medicine, and the IBI or a nurse, the schools needs to change. Now, this is not an easy thing, because it's predominantly like that. The ideology is more curing, not caring. I'm not saying that they have no caring whatsoever. No, of course not. But the more the predominant orientation is still on that track. So I think it's very important because it's very crucial and strategy. So we need to also give more attention on this sphere. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer, Ms. Triwi, and for the question, Mrs. Astrida. A very insightful information, right? Because in the domestic violence, one of the person that will know that there is a domestic violence happening is the health worker or the puskesmas worker. So I think that is very important, especially that to avoid the paradigm that the domestic household problem is a very household problem, is not a problem that should not taken or get more attention of.
They're isolating it.
I think there is still many questions, especially from Mrs. Kolida, and also there is a response from Mrs. Anna Fatia from Zoom chat box. But once again, I am really sorry to the all participants. I think this is show that this all of the presentation is a very good presentation with so many people ask a question. I think you could continue the discussion later in the WhatsApp or in the WhatsApp group. So I think that's conclude our today presentation. Once again, I want to remind you to participate in the closing ceremony of ICGCS. I believe the Zoom link is already sent to your WhatsApp group. I hope that you check your group for the link, and don't forget to fill the attendance form that I believe is already sent by the operator to the Zoom chat box. And then, yes, that concludes our today presentation. Thank you. Very many good presentation. I have get so many insight and give a new perspective and knowledge to me. And yes, we can conclude that gender-based violence is still happening, and where there is a violence, usually the first victim is a woman. either direct or indirect. Okay, I will close this meeting with my apologies if there is something that I do wrong, maybe what I do or what I said, and I will close this presentation with salam. I hope we will meet again in other occasion. Thank you, and don't forget to attend the
sorry,
closing
Bang.
ceremony. Yes.
Photo session.
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
Okay.
There will be no Zoom meeting without photo
Photo
session,
session.
right?
Okay.
Okay. Maybe operator, you can give the mark.
Ibu
Okay.
Anna.
Please, for every participant to turn on the
Yoni.
camera.
Where is Ibu Yoni? Ibu Mai Hasni. Hey, Mas Diva.
Okay. For I will count to take a picture from three. First picture, 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Yo.
For the second picture, 3, 2, 1. Okay. And the last picture, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Thank you for every participant.
Okay. Thank you for all the participants. Thank you for attending our
Thank you,
presentation
Mr.
today.
Bima.
Thank you for
Yes, you are
moderating.
welcome. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
bye.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.
See you
See
later.
you.
You leave, yeah? Leave.